Return to Mumbai Audiobook. Chapter 1. Exile and Revelation. The humid Mumbai air hung heavy. A cloying blanket woven from the scent of frying spices, diesel fumes,